Ladies and gentlemen, it's game week.
Yes.
Nole insiders Lane Hurt, Tim Lenefeld, Florida State, Alabama on Saturday. Jimbo Fisher had his press conference on Monday afternoon. Let's get to some of the highlights and the newsworthy stuff first, beginning with linebacker Matthew Thomas. Fisher said he should be back at practice today. How big would it be to have number 6 in that starting lineup on Saturday?
I mean, it's huge. He's probably the most important defensive player not named Derwin James, and you could probably argue, even more than that, given the positions and what they do. Florida State's leading tackler a year ago. There's obviously a better defense with him in the fold, so getting him back in the mix today would be a really big deal.
Sticking on the defensive side of the ball, for those of you who have forgotten, Trey Marshall is out for the first half of the Alabama game because of a targeting penalty in the second half against Michigan. Not really sure about that one and why that's the case, but moving
rules, man.
Moving forward on that, he said A.J. Westbrook might take over some of Marshall's roles, but also expect a lot of different guys in there depending on what packages they're in.
Yeah, and it was good to bring up A.J. Westbrook at the press conference today. I feel like he's a guy that hasn't been talked about all that much during fall camp, which is kind of odd because he played a lot last year once Derwin James went down. So I suspect we'll see a lot of him. I'm curious to see how Nate Andrews fits in. Don't forget he's still here as a fifth-year senior. Can play safety, can play the money role, that 6th defensive back if needed. You got to survive for 2 quarters, right? And if you look back on the last season when Trey Marshall would go out, very often that meant bad things for Florida State's defense. He really was sort of a linchpin back there, especially without Derwin James. The difference is, you'd like to think, is that Florida State has time to prepare for this. You can't predict a targeting penalty, so you have to adjust on the fly when you're in a game. But Florida State has had all offseason to kind of scheme for it. And that, plus A.J. Westbrook's had another offseason to get better, improve, get a little bit more comfortable. So I think they're going to be all right. But Jimbo Fisher has said that when that second half kicks off, Trey Marshall's going to be out there.
On the offensive side of the ball, Jaquez Patrick, the starter at running back. But if you spend any time out at practice, you notice that running back group is full of guys. There's a lot of talent there. Jimbo mentioned how they might want to use guys and they want to get guys touches. What are your thoughts on that seg as we head into this first one?
I think I don't know if there's ever been a Florida State running back group as deep as this one. Again, there's not a Dalvin Cook, and replacing Dalvin Cook is still one of the big storylines and questions around this team. But top to bottom, I think they're in as good a shape as they've been in a long time. I think you'll start with Jaquez Patrick, of course. He's the starter, and that's undisputed. But I suspect you could see 3, 4, maybe even 5 running backs get a touch of the ball against Alabama. I don't think that they're going to be too shy about getting a freshman mixed in there, whether it be Cam Akers or Kalen LeBourne. Especially Cam Akers has been here since January, is a little bit more experienced. We'll see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe you line one of those guys out there and maybe throw him a pass in the flat, kind of get the defense off balance and go from there. But yeah, like I said, I think Jaquez Patrick, to me, until he's not, he is the guy. But you're going to see those other guys mixed in as well, and that really kind of speaks more to Jimbo Fisher's pre-Dalvin Cook philosophy. So when you have a Dalvin Cook who, in my mind, is a generational type of running back, then he gets the lion's share of everything. But when you have so much depth the way Florida State does now, maybe spread it out a little bit more the way you did with Devontae Freeman and James Wilder, or Chris Thompson and James Wilder before that, some of those other guys, and sort of let players stay fresh and healthy.
You're right when you say that, Tim, because Jimbo's philosophy always has been he wants a rotation in there, maybe stick with the hot hand. And it's important to remember not everyone has a Dalvin Cook on their roster. As far as this game, Florida State versus Alabama, a lot of people want to make it Jimbo Fisher versus Nick Saban. So there's a lot of questions in the press conference about those two. I mean, from playing basketball together to things they used to do in practice, to the 2007 game that Florida State defeated Alabama in. What kind of stuck out to you in some of the comments that Coach had about Saban?
He at one point he said, somebody asked him a question about Nick Saban and Bobby Bowden. I don't remember what the exact question was. He sort of said, I've answered that 500 times. And I thought to myself, yeah, well, you might get asked it another 500 times between now and Saturday. That's just kind of the way it goes. Look, Jimbo has said several times that it's not Jimbo Fisher versus Nick Saban. It's Florida State versus Alabama. And he's right. But the 2 guys leading those programs are Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher, and when they have the history that they had, look, it's fascinating, it's interesting. Not only that, but they're both from West Virginia, and they both have similar roots. It's a great storyline. I think it's a pretty cool thing for college football to see these 2 guys getting together. It's obvious how much respect they have for each other. You saw Nick Saban was actually holding his press conference just about concurrently with Jimbo Fisher's, and lots of really nice things about Jimbo trickled out of that. He said he was one of the great play callers in the game, one of the great offensive minds in the game. And I think Jimbo has said the same thing about Nick from a defensive perspective. So, watching these two guys match wits for the first time in 10 years, I mean, how could you not get excited about it? Yes, it's going to be Derwin James and Mika Fitzpatrick and Bo Scarborough and Jacquez Patrick and all that. But, coaches play such a big part in college football. I think it's okay to embrace this coaching matchup, this strategic matchup, and see, two of the most successful college football coaches in the country going head-to-head in a game like this. I mean, why would you not have fun with it?
The Chick-fil-A people are calling it the GOAT, the greatest opener of all time. A lot of hype, 1 versus 3. How important is it for Florida State to manage that hype? And Jimbo said, don't play the game before the game.
No, I think that's exactly right. Look, it's a lot of fun for guys like you and me and fans like that. I mean, it's going to be awesome, right? I really can't believe it's in 4 or 5 days. You're going to be up there and seeing everything in the new stadium, which just looks, unbelievable. It's going to be awesome, but like Jimbo said, it's still a football game. The field is still 100 yards long. There's still another team on the other sside. Play it, and then let the chips fall where they may, and enjoy it afterward. And it was funny because he was asked a similar question about Derwin James making his first appearance in a game since the second game of last season, and said, "What's that going to be like for him?" I said, "Look, same thing. Play the game, do what you know how to do, and try to block that stuff out as much as you can." And I think that applies to Derwin and it applies to the whole team. Make it as much of a football game as you can, because if you don't, you let it get away from you, you're not going to enjoy it, right? So make the main thing the main thing. I think that's a Jimbo Fisher quote, and then let things fall from there.
We've only just begun, scratch the surface of what we're going to have for you this week on Seminoles.com. Tim will have some great features, including his 1st and 10 that'll get you ready for the game on Friday. We'll do this a couple more times. We'll have our game preview as well on Friday to get you ready for Florida State and Alabama. And in case you haven't seen it, please go to Seminoles.com or Facebook or Twitter or YouTube and check out Karina Dolan's awesome hype video. You don't want to miss it. It'll give you goose pimples or goosebumps.
Yeah.
You'll be ready for that game. Tim, final thought?
No, the video is really cool. No, it's going to be a long week. It's going to be a fun week. We'll get you through it, and we'll get you there to Saturday. It's closer than it's ever been.
There we go. For Tim, I'm Lane. Let's get ready for some football. Go Noles.